George and Daddy Pig met in the kitchen. "I hear you're gonna cook me lunch today, George," said Daddy Pig. "Are you sure you're ready?" "Yeah," said George. "I've been watching so many cooking videos on YouTube recently. I'm pretty sure I can cook you anything." "I heard that one of your last customers got really sick from eating your cooking," said Daddy Pig. "Oh, I think that's just an internet rumor. It didn't really happen like that." But when George came back, Peppa was already sick and throwing up on the floor. "Okay, I guess I'll try your cooking then." "Excellente," said George. "Now please take a seat while I show you today's ingredients." So George went to the fridge, got out some food, and showed it to Daddy Pig. "Today I'll be using bread, beef, and lettuce," said George. "So you'll be serving me a hamburger that's already made?" said Daddy Pig. Then George went back to the fridge to get some more food. "And I'll be cooking today's ingredients in this lovely cream sauce," said George. And Daddy said, "George, I'm pretty sure that's just a pack of ice cream." And George replied, "This is Haagen-Dazs ice cream. And please, call me Chef George." "All right, Chef George, I'll eat whatever you cook. Let's get started." "Excellente," said George. Then Daddy Pig picked up a magazine while George began to cook. While George was cooking, he smelt the delicious food and his stomach started to rumble. And then he had a bad case of the fart attacks. What's going on in there?" said Daddy Pig. "Are you farting up the kitchen?" "Of course not," said George. "That was just my shoes. They're really squeaky." And then George thought, "If I keep farting, I'm gonna ruin the flavor of this food. I should really take a poo right now." So George went back to the stove and set a timer for 3 minutes. And then he told Daddy Pig that he would be gone for a moment to change his squeaky shoes. But really, George went to the bathroom to take a poo. In the bathroom, George thought, "I only have a few minutes to take a poo. I'd better make this quick." So George got on the toilet and pushed, but nothing was coming out. "Why is this taking so long?" thought George. This always happens when I'm in a rush." So George really concentrated and pushed even harder. And finally, his poo started coming out. "Thank goodness I'm done pooing," thought George. "But there's no time left. I gotta get back right now." George looked at the sink and thought, "I know I should wash my hands after I use the toilet, but if I don't go back to the kitchen right now, Daddy's food could burn, and then his meal will be ruined." So George returned to the kitchen without washing his hands. As he approached the stove, he noticed that his food had just finished cooking. "I got here just in time," thought George. So he took the food and served it on a large dinner plate, then got Daddy Pig to put down his magazine and try out his masterpiece. "Very impressive," said Daddy Pig. "I can barely see the hamburger covered in all that ice cream." "Yes, it is a very difficult dish to make," said George. "Now please try some." So Daddy Pig began to eat George's meal. Daddy Pig said. "It has a sweet outer layer and a beefy inner layer. How interesting." "So you like it?" said George. "Yeah, it's not bad," said Daddy Pig. "Although it does have a slight, how should I say, poopy aftertaste." "Oh," said George. "Well, it's traditional French cooking, so maybe you're just not familiar with these flavors." And then Daddy Pig said, "That's weird. My stomach feels a little strange." And then George replied, That's probably just the ice cream mixing with the hamburger meat. Nothing to worry about." "Oh, my stomach, George. I think I'm gonna be sick." Daddy," said George, "please don't tell Mommy or that nurse or anyone." "What are you talking about, George? I gotta go to the bathroom right now." But then, Daddy Pig started having diarrhea right in the kitchen. Oh no, why does this always happen? Thought George. And just then, the Potty Police showed up. And the potty officer said, "You're really sick right now, Daddy Pig, so I need you to go to your bedroom and lay down for a while." So Daddy Pig left the kitchen, and the potty officer and George had a chat. "George," said the Potty Police, "Daddy Pig got really sick after eating your meal. Do you have any idea why?" "It wasn't the food. I didn't drop any on the floor this time," said George. "Well, perhaps not," said the potty officer, "but the person who cooks the food also has to be clean." Then she said, "George, let me take a look at your hands." And when the potty officer inspected George's hands, she could see that they were dirty. "George," she asked, "did you use the toilet recently? And did you wash your hands afterwards?" I did take a poo earlier," said George. "But I was in a major rush and, well, there just wasn't time to wash my hands." "George," said the potty officer, "it's really important that you wash your hands after every time you use the bathroom, especially when you take a poo." "I know, I just didn't want to ruin Daddy's meal. I'm a master chef now." "Well, you saved the meal, George, but Daddy Pig got really sick. Come on, let's go wash your hands right now." So George and the Potty Police returned to the bathroom. In the bathroom, the Potty Police began to explain, "After you finish taking a pee or poo, you don't leave the room until you finished washing your hands." "Okay," said George. "So even when I'm totally rushing, I should still wash my hands, right?" "That's right," said the potty officer. "If you don't wash your hands, you or somebody else can get really sick." So George washed his hands really well with a bunch of soap. And after he was done, the potty officer said that he did an excellent job of washing his hands and that he should do this every time he uses the toilet. So what do you guys think? Should George quit cooking? He's already made a few people sick. Or should he keep trying? Let me know in the comments below what you think, because you just might see it in a future episode. Peppa and George came into the kitchen. "You're cooking me lunch today?" said Peppa. "That's right," said George. "I hope you're hungry. And can you hold on for a sec? I just gotta change into something." Then George left the kitchen and returned dressed as a chef. "Please, call me Chef George. I'll be cooking you a delicious meal today." "Wow, that's a really fancy chef hat," said Peppa. "But do you know how to cook?" "Yeah," said George. "I've been watching all these food shows on Netflix recently. Today I'll be cooking some French cuisine." So George went to the fridge to get out some ingredients. "Today I'll be cooking with these fine vegetables, picked straight from Mummy's garden." And then he got out something else from the fridge. "I will sauté your vegetables in this creme de la tomato sauce," said George. "Isn't that just regular ketchup?" said Peppa. "Only the finest ketchup from the proud house of Heinz." "Oh, well that sounds fancy. I can't wait to eat your meal, George." "Please, call me Chef George. And take a seat while the master chef prepares your meal." So Peppa watched movies on her iPad while George got busy in the kitchen. Everything was going smooth for Chef George in the kitchen until he tried to move a basket full of vegetables. He dropped the food on the floor and thought, "Oh no, this meal is ruined. Peppa is going to be so disappointed. What should I do?" And when Chef George looked back at his sister, he noticed she was still watching her iPad. "Maybe she didn't see me drop the vegetables," thought George. "So maybe I can still use the vegetables in her meal." So George quickly picked up the vegetables and pretended like nothing had happened. A few minutes later, Chef George had finished his dish. and he served it on a big dinner plate. Peppa, your meal is cooked. It's time for you to enjoy my masterpiece." So Peppa came over to the dinner plate and said, "Wow, it looks great. And it smells pretty good too. I can't wait to try it." "I'm sure you'll love it," said George. "Now it's time to dig in." So Peppa began to eat her meal, while Chef George watched, a little nervously. Said Peppa. "It's kinda crunchy in some places, and yet kind of slimy in other places. Interesting." After Peppa was done, George asked, "Well, was it fantastic?" "Yeah, it was pretty good," said Peppa, "although there were a few strange flavors. But overall, I guess it was all right." Then suddenly, Peppa's stomach started to hurt, and she said, "Oh, I don't feel too good. My tummy kinda hurts. George, I think I'm gonna get sick." "Oh no, I'd better get a bucket," said George, and he left the kitchen in a hurry. But when George came back, Peppa was already sick and throwing up on the floor. "Oh no, you're really sick, and I didn't make it in time." "Yeah, after I finished eating, I just felt really unwell." "Oh, well, it totally wasn't my food or anything like that. I'm a master chef." And just then, the Lemon Pie Land nurse showed up, and she said, "Peppa, you need to go to your bedroom and lay down for a while. You're really ill right now and you need some rest." So Peppa went to her bedroom, while the nurse had a chat with George, and the nurse said, "Was there something about your food that made Peppa sick?" "Probably not," said George, "but I might have accidentally dropped a bunch of food on the floor and then scooped it up and served it anyway." "George," said the nurse, "you can't serve food that you've dropped on the floor." "I know," said George, "but I didn't want to let Peppa down. I promised that I'd cook her a meal today, but now I've just made her sick." "Look," said the nurse, "if you clean up this mess, I think we can fix this situation and make Peppa feel better." "Oh, please," said George. "I'll do anything to make Peppa happy again. She's my big sister." So George cleaned up Peppa's barf, and then the nurse showed him how to make a special drink that would soothe Peppa's upset stomach. He bottled up the drink and went to Peppa's bedroom. When George entered the room, Peppa sat up and said, "Oh, my stomach, George. It still feels pretty upset. I wonder what happened." "The nurse showed me how to make this special honey ginger drink. She said it would soothe your stomach." So George gave Peppa the drink, and she took a few big sips and said, "This tastes pretty good, and my stomach feels better already." And then George said, Peppa, I might have had something to do with your upset stomach. The food I served you, I accidentally dropped it on the floor." And Peppa said, "What? You served me dirty food? No wonder I got sick." "I'm really sorry," said George. "I just wanted to impress you with my cooking skills, but I really messed up this time." "Oh, George," said Peppa, "I guess it was your first time cooking, and you were trying really hard. But next time, if you drop the food, let's just order pizza or something, okay?" So, what do you guys think? Should George learn how to cook? Or should Mummy Pig just do all the cooking? Let me know in the comments below what you think, 'cause you just might see it in a future episode.